Well, hopefully you enjoyed that TED Talk. It's always nice to hear from the actual theorists who generated the ideas, right? And so he helped to explain what the concept of flow would be. So, kind of building from that idea, if we talk about the motivation to work and what it does for us, for a lot of people, it actually makes them feel positively about themselves and about their lives. Here's the results of a study that came out in 2014. And so, what you can see along this display is people who were employed full time, people who are self employed, people who voluntarily work part time, people who are unemployed. And in that category, this would be people who either got laid off or quit their jobs, but they haven't been able to find another one. So they want to be employed, but they are not employed. And then we have the involuntary part-times. These are people who would like to be working full-time or would like to be home full-time, but they're having to work part-time. So these are involuntary part-time. And then on the final right-hand side, we have people who are out of the labor force. They've either retired or they stay home full-time, like they have a different setup. So they're not in the workforce. Okay, so those are our different categories of people. And then if we look across the y-axis, what we see is that there's a zero in the middle. Zero is what you would call baseline. And so what we're doing in this display is looking at how people scored on a happiness scale, with zero being the baseline of happiness. Anything that's in the positive numbers would be a person who's on the happy side, and anything in the negative numbers would be people who are on the unhappy side. So you'll notice everybody's above the line, implying happy, except for the unemployed and the involuntary part-time workers. So happiness, at least for people who are between the ages of 46 and 65. So the lighter blue are the people of 46 to 65. The darker blue are the people who are 66 years old or older, which is at the time of this study, retirement age. So everybody's on the happy side except for the unemployed and the involuntary part-time. So what you have is people, you've got people who are out of the workforce, you've got people who are working part-time, but they're doing it voluntarily, and so on. So what you're seeing is when you have a person who's like out of control about how they're working or whether they're working, then you have the negative side effects with regard to happiness. It reduces their happiness. The people who are employed full-time, the younger people were happier than the people who were older than retirement age, which we could maybe infer that working past retirement age may not always be fully a choice, right? Like maybe they feel like they have to stay in the workforce when they would rather be retired by then. If you're self-employed and you're over 66, you tend to be happier than if you're self-employed and you're 46 to 65. So again, it looks like self-employment might be harder on people who are 46 to 65 than it is on people who are over 66. It looks like age, it's roughly the same when they're voluntary part-time. Age doesn't seem to play a role. If you are 46 to 65 is where it looks like involuntary part-time and unemployed really hits hard for happiness. And then being out of the labor force, again, if you're in the 46 to 65, it seems to be not as good for you as if you were over 66. But really to focus the most heavily is that being unemployed or involuntary part-time and you're in the typical working age group tends to be associated with lower levels of happiness. So work does something for us, right? And being able to make choices about work and decide how many hours to be working, when to retire, things like that, that seems to be an important part of happiness. So what contributes to a satisfied and engaged employee? I found this picture on the internet of, I don't even know what the employer is. I just picked the picture off of Google Images because, they took a picture of all their employees all wearing their apparently Letterman's jacket that they get for working there. And they've got, great profits equal happy employees, great service equals great clients, right? They're really trying to sell the whole idea of, being a really great place to work and to be a client, right? What makes a satisfied and engaged employee? Well, knowing what is expected is a really big factor in whether an employee is happy and is satisfied with their job and is engaged at work. Knowing what is expected of them. You maybe have had a job where every day was a bit of a surprise, whether you were going to have to be doing somebody else's job or take on a new task that you didn't know was part of your work description or other kinds of things. Knowing what's expected is an important factor in being satisfied. Having what is needed to do the work. So having the correct supplies, having the correct training, having all the things that you need in order to do what is expected of you helps to ensure that the employee is satisfied and engaged. Feels fulfilled at work. Now that's an ambiguous thing to say. What do you mean by feeling fulfilled? But what we're talking about here is you have employees who feel like they're appreciated, that they're valued, that what they're doing is important. Those kinds of things contribute to fulfillment. They have opportunities to do their best work. So they're sort of on the edge of their learning area where it's like, I've gotten really pretty good at what I'm doing. Do I have opportunities to do more? Do I have opportunities to get trained? Do I have opportunities to try? They feel like they're part of something significant. It doesn't have to be significant where, we're changing the face of, history as we know it or something, but instead part of something significant. Are we having an impact on people's lives? Are we serving our customer base? Are we doing something that is meaningful? And there are opportunities to learn and develop. Employees typically want to grow. They typically want to learn more. They want to apply what they've learned, things like that. And so having those opportunities help to keep employees engaged and satisfied. So, employment. Why do we work? There are extrinsic motivations for work, so let's not ignore that, of course, we work for money. Maybe we work for health insurance, and maybe we work because we're saving for retirement. So these are absolutely valid reasons for working. If we weren't working for these reasons, we would call it a hobby, right? Like we don't need it to be work if we're not getting these kinds of extrinsic benefits. So of course there are those reasons, but there are a lot of intrinsic motivations for working. There is job satisfaction, like feeling like the job is worth doing. Employment boosts our self-esteem in ways that other areas of our life oftentimes don't. One of the reasons why they call parenting a thankless job is because literally your children never thank you. When they're little, you're sort of part of the furniture that feeds them and takes care of them. And so it can really, your self-esteem can take a hit. That no matter what I do, I never get any thank yous or any appreciations, whatever. Whereas at work, your supervisor may give you a kudo, good job. I really liked how you handled that customer. That was really a good job. Your customers might give you those kinds of feedback. Maybe you get thank you notes. I always love graduation because I get all these thank you notes from graduating seniors. I mean, these kinds of things are going to build self-esteem. And you tend to get those things at work. And then finally, pride. Feeling good about where you work and what you're doing and who you work with and those kinds of things are sort of intangibles that are hard to get anyplace else. So these are intrinsic sort of things that might push us towards wanting to work. Let's talk a little bit about wages and benefits in modern employment. More people are asking for time off rather than necessarily higher salaries, believe it or not. People are willing to accept maybe a lower salary as long as it gives them more free time. And what we find is that makes a lot of sense. Here's a graph that the last time it was sort of overlaid that I can find, it ended in 2009. So I apologize for the oldness of my data. But what you see on the blue line is real income. And you can see from 1972 to 2009, real income per capita has been going up. It's not just inflation. It's people are actually earning more than they did in 1972. And this has been corrected so that it's all being I don't know why it says chained $2,005, but what they did is they corrected it so that all of these years' incomes are corrected to $2,005. So it's all apples to apples comparison. We're seeing objectively that people in 2009 are earning way more money than people in 1972 did. Okay. Now you see, even though people's incomes have been going up, the mean happiness scores on the happiness scale have stayed exactly level. There have been little dips here and there, up and down a little bit, but it's basically flat since 1972 to 2009. Even though people are earning more money, it's not making them happier. More people are dissatisfied to realize that some people are earning more than they are, or that they have better status stuff than they do, even as everybody's earning more than they did in 1972. So clearly income alone does not foster happiness. Like we're not working so that we can get more money so that then we can be happier. Like that's not necessarily working like that. In fact, this dad wisely says to his son, remember son, money can't buy happiness, but it pays for a lot of antidepressants. So what income can do for us is, once you get above the poverty level, I should qualify that. Once you get above the poverty level, additional income is not associated with additional happiness. What money can do for us once you get past the poverty level is maybe give you a little bit of breathing room to maybe pursue some of your other interests, to maybe spend time with people that you value, maybe take up a activity that would really boost your self-esteem or really boost your, sense of flow, things like that. That's what money can do in general. What employment does probably more than make us happy by giving us income is help us to strive for generativity. Some of you may have taken lifespan development or something and heard of Erik Erikson. He had 8 stages of development that he said we go through across our lifespan, and that at each stage there's sort of a conflict, a social conflict that we have to face. And he said in the middle years, which he identified as basically 40 years old till retirement age, at that time 65, and he was saying that during that period of time, we're really focused on generativity, leaving a mark on the future. So this middle adulthood period, we're striving for generativity, and the fear, the worry is that we'll end up in stagnation, he called it, where we don't see any point in what we're doing and we can't see a way to move forward. So during this period of time, people on average establish their career, they settle down in a relationship, maybe begin a family, develop a sense of being part of a bigger picture. Maybe they're starting to make a mark in their career field by raising children. They're making a mark on them. Maybe they're mentoring other people in some fashion, maybe coaching a team or mentoring younger employees, or maybe they're writing a book or doing a daily blog on the internet that other people can read, or things like that. They're leaving a mark on the future. That's generativity. During this period of time, you see adults in this age bracket really almost naturally giving back to society in some way. Raising children is the most direct route for, giving back to society. But being productive at work gives back to society. Being involved in community activities, joining different kinds of professional organizations or volunteer organizations or charitable organizations. These are ways to give back to society. There's a whole bunch of things that people in this sort of middle part of adulthood tend to do. If we successfully solve this crisis on the side of generativity, we will develop the virtue, according to Erikson, of care. So that instead of worrying about ourselves and who we are and those kinds of things, or even just sort of the next stage, he says once we've figured out our own identity, then we start to try to find a mate or somebody to commit to. So maybe we're interested in one other. In this stage, we're interested in actually caring about other people and wanting to take care of other people and help them to achieve their goals and things like that. If we fail to achieve generativity and we fall into stagnation, he says that's when we can end up stagnant and feeling unproductive. That we might even start to have thoughts like, I don't even know what the purpose of life is. I don't even know why I'm here. Nobody's even going to know that I was here. What's the difference? Those kinds of thoughts. And so one of the things that employment does for us is it helps us to have like natural ways to achieve generative behaviors so that we can feel good about ourselves and settle this conflict on the side of care more likely. So that's an important aspect of employment. So one thing that employment does for us that helps us with generativity is it helps us to develop our own skills. It helps us to use our skills. So that's a big important aspect. It allows us to express our creative energy. A lot of jobs give us opportunities to maybe solve a problem in our own way, or maybe actual creative energy where maybe you get to help develop the artwork for something, or I'm just sort of spitballing ideas of ways that, employment gives us the opportunity to do things that maybe we otherwise wouldn't get to do. It gives us the opportunity to mentor coworkers. A lot of times, especially as we start to move into like the middle-aged years, we've made enough headway in our career that we now have skills and knowledge and insights that we can share with the next, generation of employees, right? Employment gives us the opportunity to support the education of the family, the health of the family by, having the money to save up for college, or securing those health care benefits that I mentioned earlier. We also, get to contribute to the community by providing whatever it is that our employer does, right? Providing goods and services that our employer does. So these are all benefits that if you look at it through the lens of Erikson's theory, you can see why employment is so important to adults, and how come people maybe who are involuntarily unemployed or are not working as many hours as they would like to might feel some stress and dissatisfaction as a result of that. All right, let's go ahead and stop here, and we'll come back in the next video and talk about job satisfaction.